Hi, and welcome back, or welcome to John's Puzzles. If this is your first time, you're also welcome with us. On this channel, we solve puzzles. We've been looking at star battle puzzles this week, and there's been quite a lot of responses and people saying how much they're enjoying solving them. And so I'm just doing a bonus video where I'm solving one, which is particularly beautiful. It's got a lovely trick to it, so I hope that you will enjoy having a look at how to solve this. It's created by a guy called Thomas Snyder. Some of the other puzzles we've looked at are probably made by computers. And when you do them, there's sometimes some really nice tricks in there. But when you do ones that have been made by people, often there's some really clever and wonderful logic jumps, and this one is no exception. It was covered by Cracking the Cryptic, which is a great YouTube channel where they solve majority Sudokus, but they do other puzzles, and they're quite frankly fantastic. It's kind of very reminiscent of what I'm doing, really. And so the software that they use is different. So um, you'll notice that the colours that we're going to see here are that I'm going to have to use colours and not pictures of stars. But without further ado, then let's get into it. So for those of you who've not seen star battles before, basically the rules are below. But if you place a star and my stars are going to be blue, then you cannot place another star next to it. So we're going to use red to indicate places that the stars can't go. So all stars have got to be separated or socially distanced, as might be a more appropriate term in the climate that we're in. And the other rule is that you have to have exactly two stars in every column, and then two stars in every row, and then two stars in each of these shapes. And they're the rules. I won't spend a lot of time going through some of the tricks, um, but I will hopefully give you a few more things to think about when you're solving them. And a few people have commented and said, I've been really enjoying them, but I get stuck on these kind of things. So hopefully we'll cover a few of the little tricks that you can use as you go through. So first up, if we if you initially look at this, you look for the small shapes, shapes with a small number of cells in first, and you might notice that there aren't that many shapes with a small number of cells. You've got this little one here, and one of the tricks you can use in star battles is that if you have a 2 by 2 cell like this, you know that there has to be one star in there. In fact, there can be only at most one star in there. You can't put two stars in this cell, and because you know you're going to need two stars in the entire shape, that means that we must have at least one star in this 3 cell little block, because there's going to be a star either here, or there's going to be a star here, or there's going to be a star here. There's going to be a star in one of those. There can never be a star above or below its central point. So to illustrate that in the colours that I said I'd use, if you had the star, say, in this space here, you know that still can't be a star because none of these can be stars. And that's the same for the other side, and is hopefully obviously the same for the middle. So we can rule out this space and this space as possible stars. And we can do that here as well. So we've got another 2 by 2 shape there. And so because there's going to be at most one star in here, there has to be at least one star in this shape here. And that means that there cannot be a star there because it will rule out all of those options for stars. At this point, you kind of look at this in a bit of despair, and you kind of how on earth can I move forward? And there's a really neat trick that we'll talk about in a moment. But before we do that, I'll just show you a little tip, where if you can draw a little imaginary line. So if we were to draw a little imaginary line for, here, which is means that we are kind of splitting the puzzle into two blocks. One of them is these top kind of 4 rows here, which I'm trying to colour in a little bit like this. You know that there has to be at most, in fact, exactly 8 stars in there because there's 2 stars in every row. But because you've got this shape, which is going to contain 2 stars, and then you've got this shape, which is going to contain 2 stars, and this shape, which is going to contain 2 stars, and finally this one, that's going to contain 2, that's 8 stars in total already, which means that all of the other area that is included in our initial 4 rows can't contain stars because we filled up all the stars. So that means that these can't contain a star, and these can't contain any stars as well, which definitely helps us out because we get another little block here which must contain a star, and we get a little domino here where you must be at least 1 star in this set of 2 for there to be 2 stars in this entire shape, because you've got going to have 1 here and you can't put 2 in there, so you're going to have 1 there as well. And because there's a star in either this space or this space, there cannot be a star in one of those 2 spaces. And that's going to help us along a little bit, but really you need to think about some ways of disambiguating in a bigger way in this puzzle. And so the keen-eyed amongst you will notice these shapes around the sides, these kind of R's or L's or chevrons, and these shapes are really interesting. And you're welcome to try this puzzle yourself at home. I'll put the link in the description. But it's worth thinking now. If you want, you can pause the video. What can I do with these shapes? What's interesting about these shapes? Where might the stars go? And so you might think, okay, let's think about the corners. So if I put a star in one of the corners, okay, that's fine. What does that mean? Well, it means that there can be at most 1 more star in this row. Okay, so where might that go? Well, let's say that it goes here. That means that none of these can be a star, which means that you must have a star here, and then you must have a star here. And that means that none of these can be a star, which means you must have a star here, and then you must have a star here, for them to be 2 in each of these cages. And that means that none of these can be a star because you've used up all the stars for the row. And that means there must be a star here, and there must be a star here. But now we've got 3 stars on the bottom row. So that means that if we undo the things that we've just done, that means that there can't be a star here and then another star in this shape. And in fact, if you put a star in this shape further above, when you've got one in the corner, it doesn't solve your problem. You're still going to end up in the same situation where you're going to need 1 more star here, and that means you're going to need at least 1 star in this column, and then there's got to be at least 1 star here, which I'll indicate with like a green, and then you're going to need at least 1 star here, which indicate with an orange. And admittedly, one of these could be that there could be just 1 star in the corner, but then you would still need another star in the orange for that to be the case. So the orange is quite similar to the red. And then you would need at least 1 more star down here, which I'm going to indicate with some kind of orange shape, which means that you can't have a star in the bottom row, which means that you need, because there's 2 stars, so we can put a red there, because we've got 1 star here and 1 star there, which means that you have to have another star in this. You must have another star in this bottom row, because, just in case I've muddled you there, there's got to be a star in this orange gap. We know that because this space can only contain 1 star. So this orange gap, this space here must contain 1 star, which means that we must have a star somewhere here. But because we have a star somewhere here, at most 1 star there, we must therefore have another 1 star only here. Because we know there's going to be a star here, that means that we've used up all our stars for this bottom row, either here or in this bottom bit. And now, where do you put your 3rd star in this L shape? You can't put it there and you can't put it here because we've used up all the stars in this row with these two stars, and we've used up all the stars in this row with the star that's going to go here and the star that's going to go here. So that's a little bit in depth, but the kind of symmetry works out, and there's a few different ways you can look at that. But in short, there is no way of placing a star in the corners. And you can have a little bit of fun yourself and try and place a star in the corners, but there isn't any way of doing that. The other thing that we now know, because we can't place a star in the corner, is that you must, however you do this, you're going to use a star, you're going to have to use all of the stars from the outside. What do I mean by that? Well, there's only two ways you can fill in stars in this remaining shape. You can put two stars in the same little leg, I suppose, of the chevron, but that means that there can't be any stars in the above leg, which means there must be two stars in this leg over here, which means there can't be any stars in that leg, which means there must be two stars in this leg, and therefore there can't be any stars in this leg, which means that, hey, we've got two stars in this leg, which is kind of nice symmetry. But in any case, that means that you're never going to have stars in these spaces. So not including those, but yeah, that middle space as well. Now you might say to me, well, John, what happens if you don't do it like that? I'm thinking, you might actually be thinking, John, this is a little bit in depth for me. Why are we spending so much time on the corners? But it is pretty when you see how it all works out. So what happens if we know that the corners aren't stars, but what happens if you don't have two stars in the same bit? What happens if you have one star, say here, and then one star, say here? Well, that means that you can't have two stars in this little group of three. So let's make that yellow. You can't have two stars in there because you've already got one star in that column. So you must have at least one star in this little space as well, because you can't fit all of your two stars in this bit. Because you know that there's at least one star in this bit, that means that using the same logic, you must have at least one star in this little bit over here. Because you can't possibly fill this, you can't put your two stars for this shape, say for example here and here, because then you'll never be able to have one star in this little bottom green bit over here, which means there must be at least one star over there. And that means there must be at least one star over here. And that means that we've got basically this space, this little leg, and this little leg, and this little leg have all got at least one star in it. And if you do the same logic the other way around, which you obviously can do, kind of counterclockwise, using this star instead of that one, then you know that actually there's got to be one star at least in this space, which I'm going to call it grey. And then using the same logic, there's got to be one star in this space, and then using the same logic, we come to the same point, which there's got to be one star in that space. So, what do we learn from all of that? We learn that there's gonna be at very least one star. There's going to be at very least two stars in the bottom column, bottom row, contributed by these shapes. There's going to be at least two stars contributed in the last column or the first column by these shapes. So in short, what we learn is that regardless where we put the stars in these L's and these R's, if we put them like this or we put two in each leg, there's never going to be a star in any of these spaces. And that feels like that's quite a lot of work to get to, but it's quite a neat little way of getting rid of a lot of spaces using, I'd say, quite in-depth logic, but hopefully quite enjoyable logic. And there's a few other ways you can prove that to yourself, and if you want to, that you can. But I hope I did an alright job of explaining there that these can never be stars. And this really gets us going at this point. So here we have another little domino, 1x2 space. You know there's got to be a star either here or here, which means there can't be a star next to it. Similarly, because if you know there's got to be a star in one of these two spaces. In fact, let's go even further than that. You know there can't be a star here because it would take up all of the shape if you put a star there, and they won't be able to fit another star in it. And that gives you 2 dominoes, which means that we can blank out the spaces either side, because if you know there's 1 star in either of these places, there can't be a star next to it. What else does that give us that's helpful for us? You know there can be at most 1 star in this 2x2 shape. You know it's not going to be there already, but there can be at most 1 star in this space, which means that there has to be at least 1 star in this 2x1 shape, or a domino as we've been calling it. So we know that this can't be a star. Where else can we look? Oh, this is a good old classic star battle shape, because you know that you can never put a star in this space because it will take up all of the space in the shape, and you need to put 2 in, which means we can put our first star in. Hooray! And we have another domino, so we can use that to put in some red next to the domino shape. Great, that's good news for us. We are making slow progress, but with some of the harder puzzles, that's just kind of how it is. Here we'll see a domino, and then below it another domino, and that means that we're going to have 1 star here and at least 1 star here, which means that we can get rid of these spaces. We know that these cannot be stars, because we've used up all our stars in this column already. Next up, what can we do next? Okay. Okay, we know that this can't be a star, because if we put a star here, then it rules out all the spaces left in that shape. So that can't be a star, which gives us a domino here, and a domino here, and then a domino here. And these 2 dominoes next to each other will mean there's got to be 4 stars. There's got to be 2 stars in one of these 4. There's got to be 2 stars in 2 of these 4 spaces, which means that this can't be a star, and none of these can be a star. Which means that this must be a star, which means that this can't be a star. I love it when this happens, and it means this must be a star, this can't be a star, which means that this must be a star. That's such a joy when you get a nice little run like that. Great. It becomes quite difficult to see the shapes at some point, but hopefully you're following as we're going through. What next? So I think there must be something here with this shape here. So if I was to put a star here, or in one of these 3 spaces, that would mean that this space couldn't be a star, which would mean this space would have to be a star, which would mean that none of those could be stars, which means that I now need to place my final star for this shape in one of these 2 spaces, but that means that there will be 3 stars in that row, and we can't do that. That's a bad thing to do. So that means that we can't put a star in one of those spaces, which means that there must be a star here, which means there can't be a star here, and then we only have a gap with 3 in it to put stars in, and that's the only way that you can fill that with stars, which means that there can't be a star here, which means that there must be a star here, which means that there can't be a star here, which means that there must be a star here. And yeah, hopefully you're seeing some of the reason why I wanted to show you this particular star battle. It's very kind of pleasing, I hope. It is for me anyway. This means that this column, you can get rid of the rest of that column. Does that mean we can do something with these shapes yet? Perhaps not quite yet. What can we do now then? Okay. So in this column here, we can see that you must have a star up here. and there must be at least one star in this 2x1 shape down here, which means that there's at most one star in here. Oh, we can fill that with red because it's next to this star. Okay, that's helpful. Similarly, oh, here we go. Similarly, we can get rid of some of those spaces. We know that there has to be one more star in this top row. That cannot be a star. There must be a star in one of those two, which means there can be at most one star in here, and most one star in here. In fact, there has to be one star in here and one star in here, which means that there can't be stars in these spaces, because regardless where you put a star in this shape, there will never be a star here. Regardless where you put a star in this shape, there will never be a star here. And because we know there's only one star in here, and for like a whole load of other reasons, thinking about it now, this one must be a star for there to be two stars in the bottom row, which means that this one can't be a star. Good. Okay. Well, we've got quite a lot of stars in at this point. Let's see what else we can think about. Okay, so when I get stuck, it's always useful to look for where you can draw an invisible line. So let's say we draw an invisible line in these bottom 5 rows. So we're looking at this shape that I'm shading in orange as we speak. We know that there's got to be 10 stars in that space, so we can do some counting. So we know we're going to get 2 stars from there. We've already got 2 stars from here. We're going to get another 2 stars from this shape because we know that there aren't any stars being contributed from above, so that's 6 stars in total. This bit is going to give us 2 stars because it needs to, because it's the cage. The cage doesn't have any stars in it at all, so that's 8 stars. This bit is going to give us our final 2 stars. That's 10 stars for the bottom 5 rows, which means that none of this can be a star, which is quite nice. It definitely gives us a bit less to have to worry about, which is good news. Okay. Feels like there must be something obvious that we can do now. What is the obvious thing? So we know we're going to have 1 star in here and 1 star in here. That doesn't necessarily help us out. We know that we're going to have 2 stars in this big shape. We need 2 stars in there. Maybe if we do that same exercise, but with the bottom 4 rows, can we do that? No, let's have a look. So in the bottom 4 rows, so in this rectangle, let's have a look at that. We're going to get 2 stars from this shape. We've got 1 star here. We're going to get 2 more from this shape. No, maybe it's not as easy to do that. And that means that we've got a total of 5 stars. So we've got 3 more. That means that we're going to have to get 3 more using these spaces. But that doesn't mean that we can't have, we must have 2 and we must have 1. But it does mean that there's only one that's going to be either here or here. I think we already knew that from logic. Okay, so that hasn't necessarily helped us out at all. But there we are. Alright, let's see if we can figure out how to do this. Let's have a little think. Okay, great. So for everyone who was screaming at the screen and they're like, John, this is blindingly obvious, why aren't you seeing it? Sometimes when you're doing puzzles, you just need to take a moment to kind of look back and kind of forget everything you've been thinking about. And so then you'll see really obvious things like this entire column only has 2 spaces left in it. So I apologize to everyone who was looking at that being like, clearly that's the only place that they can go. But Just wasn't seeing it. That's how it is sometimes. There we are. That means that there's now only one space left here for a star to go in this column. That means that neither of these can be stars. And I mean, at this point, it really just solves itself. So you've got your two in that row. I said it really just solves itself. There's some infamous last words. Okay, we filled in this shape, so they can't be stars, which means that this must be a star, which must be these can't be stars. Surely we get okay. This must be a star, and this must be a star. And now we must be there at this point. These can't be stars. One of those must be a star, which means that that can't be a star, and this can't be a star because there's already two in this column. So this must be a star. This can't be a star. This must be a star. These can't be stars because we've got two in that column now. This can't be a star because we've got two in that column now. Ah, come on. There must only be two stars. Okay, this can't be a star. This must be a star. This can't be a star, and this must be a star. There you go, finished. Just check. Oh no, not finished. Apologies. This can't be a star. This must be a star. This can't be a star. This can't be a star, and this must be a star. I'm just gonna check it. It looks good to me. Yeah, I think we're done. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. That's just a little bonus video on what I think was a particularly nice star battle with some other kind of little tips and tricks that you can use as you're solving the ones that you guys are looking at. Later this week, I'll put out a video on a different type of puzzle, but I just wanted to do another one on star battles because I was getting so much feedback on both how much people were enjoying them, but also a lot of people are asking questions about different ways of solving them. So hopefully this will give you some hints and tips anyway. Thanks for watching, and I will see you again soon. And I've put information about this puzzle, which was created by a great puzzle designer called Thomas Snyder. He makes amazing puzzles, and there's some more info on where to find this if you want like the original source in the description.